Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. The top-ranked Clemson Tigers will be traveling to Winston-Salem on Saturday night to take on the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. It is the location of the first on-site college game day of the year, and it is a matchup that is our second game of the week, going into week 2 of this college football season. We know who is going to win this game. The Clemson Tigers should take down Wake Forest and could take them down with ease. But why will Clemson win this game? And what must Wake Forest do to try to keep it close? We are here to answer all of those questions, guys. We are here to break down this matchup, an ACC matchup in the second week of the season between the number 1 team in the country and a Wake Forest team that is always relatively sneaky good under head coach Dave Clawson. So going into this matchup, guys, let's take a look at a little bit of history. A little bit of the history between the Tigers and the Demon Deacons. Clemson has won 11 straight over Wake Forest. 11 straight over Wake Forest. And that 33-point spread going into Saturday's matchup indicates that it's probably going to be a 12th straight when it's all said and done. And while Clemson has had some relatively close matchups against Wake Forest over that 11-game span, not many of them have been close in recent years. Clemson defeated Wake Forest by 49 last year. And the last time they visited Winston-Salem, they defeated the Demon Deacons by 60. Wake Forest has not scored a touchdown against Clemson in 3 years. They have failed to score a touchdown in 3 years against the Tigers, who, of course, over that span has been arguably the best team in the country. But, this is the first game of the season for both Clemson and for Wake Forest. Maybe the Tigers could be a little bit rusty. Maybe they're going to start slow. And maybe the Demon Deacons will be able to capitalize on that and give their fans and their team some hope, at least early on in this matchup. Let's take a look at each offense real quick. We'll start with the visiting team. We know what Clemson is capable of, and we know who they have on that offensive side of the ball. They have the best duo in all of college football. Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, Travis Etienne at running back. That right there, as we have said, that right there is good enough to get you into the college football playoff. Arguably the best quarterback in the country, arguably the best running back in the country, both on the same team. Now, of course, the loss of their wide receiver, Justin Ross, that hurts Clemson. That happened months ago when he got injured. So we knew that. Clemson has had time to prepare for life without Justin Ross. They still have Amari Rodgers, and they still have Joseph Ngata, a guy that has really received a lot of praise going into this 2020 season, a guy that has to step up. It's always a next man up mentality, regardless of who you are and what team you play for, because you never know when you're going to get your chance. And Ngata's been promoted, really, to this primary receiver role. And I think the Tiger coaches, players, and fans are thrilled to see him really get more action in 2020, lining up alongside Rodgers and becoming one of the top targets for Trevor Lawrence. When you look at Wake Forest, guys, and their offense, they were thin enough as it was going into this season. And then that was before some more players decided to opt out. Wake Forest originally had 3 starters coming back on the offensive side of the ball. They lost their quarterback, Jamie Newman, who transferred to Georgia, and then for some reason decided to opt out of the season. Newman was getting, votes for the Heisman already. People thought he was a Heisman contender. They thought that with him at quarterback, Georgia could win a national title, and they still could, perhaps, with JT Daniels. But it was an interesting move by Jamie Newman. Sam Hartman now fills in at quarterback. He played 4 games for the Demon Deacons last year and was the starter for the Demon Deacons in 2018. So it's not like he's just been thrust onto the scene. Hartman has tons of experience, and I thought that in the time that he played last year and the time that he played in 2018, thought he was a pretty dang good quarterback. The problem is he now has nothing to work with in 2020. The top wide receiver in the ACC the top wide receiver for Wake Forest. Sage Surratt opted out of this season. He's going to focus on the NFL draft, and he certainly will be drafted, maybe as early as the first round. You lose Surratt, you lose your running back in Cade Carney, then you lose your other top receivers in Kendall Hinton and Scotty Washington. None of those guys were going to be here to begin with. COVID didn't affect them, so we knew Wake Forest was going to struggle offensively. The loss of Sage Surratt, though, just hurts them even more. So what's a key offensively for Wake Forest? If I'm Dave Clawson and if I'm Sam Hartman, I have nothing to lose. I have nothing to lose. You are a 33-point underdog. You have nobody around you to help you. So they haven't really had much time to build chemistry with their other wide receivers, a receiving core that is relatively thin. So why not take shot after shot after shot against what is supposed to be a weaker Clemson secondary? We know that Clemson's strength defensively, we'll touch on it in a second, but we know that their strength defensively is going to be up front along that defensive line and in that linebacking core. So against a weaker or thinner Clemson secondary, just throw the ball. Who knows? You might result in a few plays. You might draw some pass interference calls that allow you to move down the ball down the field without having to do anything. That's what I would be doing if I were Wake Forest. Defensively, again, we'll start with Clemson. They're led by the best defensive coordinator and the best defensive mind in all of college football. Clemson is stacked not just physically on the field, but mentally on the field as well when it comes to their coaching staff. Dabo Swinney as their head coach, and then you've got Brent Venables as your DC. And again, defense wins championships. So Venables is back yet again, and we know that Clemson loses a lot on the defensive side of the ball, but Clemson does not lose, and Clemson does not rebuild. Clemson reloads. So yes, players are gone to the NFL draft. Hate to see it happen, but we've got a lot of guys waiting in the wings that are ready to take their place and are going to continue the success that the former players had. We know that Clemson is going to be very, very strong up front. The defensive line and that linebacking core, that front seven, going to be so dangerous this season. You've got Xavier Thomas up front on that defensive line. You've got James Skalski at linebacker. This is the defense, guys, that allowed 13.5 points per game last year. Was one of the best in the country last year. I don't really expect much of that to change in 2020, despite some of the key losses. So that's what you're looking at for Clemson, and that's what Wake Forest offense is going up against. Now, Wake Forest, defensively, they returned 9 starters. And as we mentioned in our Week 2 predictions, guys, 9 starters is pretty dang good. 9 starters for this Wake Forest team is really good, especially when you're going up against middle-of-the-pack ACC teams. That's going to serve them well. It just might not serve them very well when you're going up against the best offensive duo in the country. But we'll break down Wake's defense. 9 starters coming back, led by Carlos Basham along the defensive line. Basham had 11 sacks last year and 18 tackles for a loss. He's extremely impressive. He's one of the best defensive players in the entire ACC this season. And that right there is your key. Clemson lost 4 offensive linemen from last year's team. Clemson, like Wake Forest, but we'll focus on Clemson, enters this game having not played anybody, having not played or hit anybody different than themselves since that national championship loss to LSU. And they really haven't hit much of themselves either. Many teams not being able to practice due to this coronavirus pandemic. So they could be a little rusty. And a guy like Basham could surprise a Clemson offensive line that's relatively inexperienced. So if I'm Wake Forest, I'm going to try to pressure Trevor Lawrence as much as possible. I'm going to try to pressure him as much as possible. You've got a very experienced defense. You've got a leader up front. You've got a strong defensive line going up against an offensive line that's not the best yet. It might go through some growing pains early this season, early in this game. So pressure Trevor Lawrence, guys, because if you do not, he's going to sit in that pocket and make you pay for it. And he's going to make Wake Forest pay for it, as the Demon Deacons had the 101st ranked defense against the pass in 2019. So the secondary is already a cause of concern going into this season. Trevor Lawrence is going to try to exploit that as much as he can in a relatively short amount of time. So the key offensively for Wake Forest, take shot after shot after shot. Don't play conservative. Yes, you want to try to win the game. But again, what do you have to lose? No one is expecting you to win this game. No one is expecting you to keep this game close. You don't have much talent offensively. You don't have much experience offensively. So just go for it. Defensively, pressure the heck out of Trevor Lawrence. Rattle him early. He's a guy that doesn't get rattled. Honestly, if you sack him enough and you frustrate him enough, you make him mad, and then he starts playing better. Just ask Ohio State. So you look at that, guys, and you think about all of this. Sure, there are things that Wake Forest can do to keep this game close. There are things that Wake Forest can do to make this game a little bit more respectable than the 49-point loss they suffered last year and the 60-point loss they suffered the last time they hosted the Tigers. So the final analysis here as we wrap up our second game of the week, and then we usher ourselves into another college football Saturday. Our final analysis is this. Obviously, Clemson wins. We picked Clemson in the Week 2 predictions, picking them now. That's not going to change. And I'm going to give you a 99.9% chance that the Tigers do, in fact, defeat the Demon Deacons. We just mentioned there are ways Wake Forest can keep it close. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. Personally, it all sounds great. I don't think the Demon Deacons can do it. I think the Tigers win this game by at least 28 points. But for you Wake Forest fans out there, I'll leave you with this. You have to play the game. Can't give yourself an automatic victory or an automatic loss. You have to play the game. And in the world of college football, crazy things can happen. Any given Saturday. We know that saying, and we know it to be true. It's the first game for each of these programs. Clemson comes out a little bit shaky, comes out a little bit rusty. Wake Forest, you catch them by surprise. You start fast, you start strong in front of practically nobody in your stands. We've seen crazier upsets happen in the world of college football, especially early in the season. Why not Wake Forest, and why not the Demon Deacons, who are looking to upset their first top 5 opponent since 1946? So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. As always, make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos, and make sure to check out everything down in that description below. We've got exclusive content on our website, thegridironexpert.com. Things like our weekly newsletter and our expert picks, our Week 2 picks, are already out for this week. We also have a brand new Patreon account where you can get exclusive content that you will not receive anywhere else. Not here on YouTube, not on our website, strictly on Patreon. So make sure to go check that out as well. And check out betnow.com as well. Use that 100% sign-up bonus to utilize our expert picks or any bets you plan on putting down for the 2020 college football season. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe out there and have a fantastic college football weekend. And we will see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.